With Love, Meghan is an 8-episode series that effectively offers very little to the viewer. I watched it in full. I watched episode after episode back to back, and I genuinely couldn't find anything to take away from it. You don't really learn anything. It's not an educational show, unless of course your desire in life is learn how to harvest your own honey or make ice cubes with flowers in them. So I think the key takeaway from my point of view, and from what I've seen from the reviews, a lot of people's point of view, is that it is a very self-serving project. It is effectively an opportunity for Meghan to showcase the rather frivolous things that she does in her free time, like building a fruit platter to make it look like a rainbow or turning a crostini into a ladybird. But these are all things that most working parents do not have time to do. So I'm not sure who is going to benefit from this show, but I don't think many people will. We don't see much of Prince Harry in this show at all. I think if you totted up the entire amount of time that you see him, it would come to under a minute. And this is something I don't understand, but it is a mistake that Harry and Meghan continue making. Their brand, their whole appeal as far as the public is concerned, is the two of them as a couple. They came out of the royal family with this ridiculously large bang. They were throwing barbs across the ocean back at Harry's family. They were laying bare what they said to be their truth about their experience of living and working within the royal family. And then all of a sudden, it was like they wanted to pretend that none of that had happened. And instead of continuing that narrative, instead of continuing to work together as a couple in a David and Victoria Beckham-esque way, the two of them have decided to pursue individual projects that, quite frankly, don't go very far beyond just touting their personal hobbies. You had Harry doing an entire documentary about the sport of polo, in which Harry once again barely featured. Now you've got Meghan doing an entire series about how to make food look pretty. And again, you hardly hear anything about her actual home life. Netflix promoted the show as an at-home with Meghan-esque series. They don't even film it inside her home. You don't actually get to see inside Meghan and Harry's home. Instead, she chose to film it in a nearby property that echoed the aesthetics of the mansion that she shared with Harry. Why? She said in an interview it's because she wanted to protect the haven that she and Harry have created for their children. But you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you are going to create an entire Netflix series that is based around you being a kind of picture-perfect homemaker, you have to actually offer people a look inside your home. I think when it comes to the guests, the list of people who appear in the show kind of speaks to the confusion around the show itself. While I was watching all of the episodes, it seemed to me very much like the series couldn't make up its mind about what it wanted to be. Is it an aspirational series that is aimed at making people feel bad about themselves because they are never going to turn a fruit platter into a rainbow for their children? Or is it a parenting show that is aimed at helping working mothers with tips and tricks and advice about how to feed their children healthy meals? When it comes to the guest list, it's the same thing. Is it a celebrity-led show in which Meghan can rely upon her A-list friends? Or is it meant to offer a glimpse into Meghan's personal community in Montecito where she lives? Instead of actually answering one of those questions, it kind of tries to go right down the middle, and in doing so, it feels faked. You've got Mindy Kaling appearing in one episode being cooked a frittata by Meghan, who then scolds her for daring to call her Meghan Markle. And then in another episode, you've got, one of Meghan's neighbors and someone who she does Pilates with. And then in another episode, you have a beauty brand founder who teaches Meghan how to repair Japanese pottery. It's so all over the place. And I think that any viewer, unless they are watching it simply because they want a view into how Meghan maybe spends her days not in her own home, I don't think there's really much that a viewer is going to glean from this. You don't have enough star power for it to be a kind of splashy celebrity series, but at the same time, you don't have enough authenticity for it to really provide the inside look into Meghan's life that I know her fans really want. Meghan makes one vague reference to her life in the royal family. And it's right at the end of the series when she talks about the fact that she's missed the opportunity to be creative. She says that she's always wanted to get back into this kind of thing. She alludes to the fact that her series is very closely inspired by her blog, The Tig, which she was forced to shut down when she and Harry became serious in their relationship. But other than that, she doesn't really talk about the royal family at all. Now, on the one hand, I get it. I think that had Meghan and Harry continued this narrative of royal bashing, people would have grown tired. Their Harry and Meghan Netflix documentary was enough. We had enough of the royal bashing in that series. But at the same time, if Meghan and Harry are going to move away from that aspect of their lives, they need to prove that they have something else to offer. What this series indicated to me was that Meghan needed to give something to Netflix. They have this $100 million deal. They aren't really earning money elsewhere, and they had to provide Netflix with something. Harry chose polo, so Meghan chose homemaking. But I think that you're not getting any meat or substance from this show. And when you look at everything else that Netflix is producing, Meghan's series just can't hold a candle to any of the other kind of nitty-gritty true crime documentaries that Netflix is thriving on. And I think, a lot of TV critics have pointed out that this could have been a make or break moment for Meghan and Harry when it comes to maintaining their Netflix series. Truthfully, I think if you're a Netflix producer, you're going to look at the early numbers, which granted will probably be quite high. I think people will tune into an episode or two because they're interested to see what the show is about. But after that initial excitement fades, this show is just going to disappear. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Harry and Meghan's Netflix deal will disappear with it. I think the royal family is going to be breathing a sigh of relief. There's nothing inflammatory, there's nothing critical. The royal family really don't feature at all, unless you're really reading into the subtext of a few of the things that Meghan and Harry say. You're not walking away with the distinct impression that they're still angry at the royal family, even though they might be behind the scenes. So I think that this is really one of the first projects that Meghan has been a part of where the royal family haven't been on the receiving end of criticism and attack. So if you are one of the royals, you're sitting there, you're tuning into it, you're maybe saying, oh, don't really understand what this is, to be honest. But then you're walking away content in the knowledge that maybe Harry and Meghan have decided to leave all of that other stuff in the past and finally do what they have said they want to do all along, which is move on with their lives. The media reviews of this show have been violently critical. Most people who have watched it from a kind of professional standpoint have made very clear that they don't really understand the point of the show. One of the quotes I saw this morning was tangible desperation. The idea that, again, Meghan needed to give Netflix something, but she had nothing of substance to offer. Another person pointed out very cannily that this is basically just an extended hours-long ad campaign for Meghan's upcoming brand release. She mentions a few of the things that she's going to be selling. You see a couple of jars of jam rolling around on set. And that's truly how it felt. My understanding is that the partnership between Netflix and Meghan is going to extend to her brand. Products from As Ever, as it's now called, are going to be sold in Netflix stores. Netflix will have a hand in promoting the products and so on and so forth. But it just takes away from the authenticity. You can't promote a show as being this kind of warm and candid look into Meghan's life as a wife and mother, and then give them this glossy, over kind of saturated, perfect picture of what her life is like. Not even her life at home, because it isn't filmed inside her home. So I have to agree with the critics here. It basically just feels like it's a giant clap on the back that Meghan's giving herself. She invites her friends over, both famous and non-famous, and then spends 30 minutes chatting with them while they sit there and tell her how great she is. Which, wonderful. That's a very brilliant boost for Meghan's ego, but it's not one that anyone needs to spend hours of their time watching. I think when it comes to the response to Meghan, American media on the whole, particularly American magazines, have always been much more sympathetic towards her. And this dates back to before she and Harry even moved here. I think it's very clear to see which outlets have a good relationship with Meghan and Harry and which outlets don't. This is a kind of divide that developed a few years ago when Meghan and Harry said that they would not be following the royal tradition of kind of working with media outlets across the board. Instead, they said that they would only be willing to work with outlets that would effectively cover them in the way that they wanted to be covered. Since that day, we've really seen that kind of dynamic come into play. You've got tabloid newspapers, you've got the kind of more news-focused magazines, all of whom have no qualms whatsoever in criticizing Meghan and Harry when they feel like criticism is due. However, when you flip it over to the more, I guess, consumer-focused magazines like Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, even People magazine, there is always an edge of sensitivity towards Meghan and Harry and a great reluctance to criticize. That being said, I do think that if you're looking at this show purely as a kind of form of aesthetic entertainment, if you want to look at pretty things, look at pretty people, and look at pretty flowers, then it's going to provide you with exactly what you want. However, if you're going into this show looking for recipes that you might be able to learn, or looking for decoration tips or organization tips, you're not really going to walk away with that. It's almost as if Meghan's saying like, haha, well, I've learned how to do it, figure it out yourselves. The fan reaction to the show has been very mixed, as it always is. I would argue that Meghan and Harry, to, use a British reference here, are like human Marmite. They really are some of the most divisive people I've ever come across in my career. You've got the people who will go to war for them, who will defend them to the nth degree. Anything they do is no negative thing. You've got people on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Reddit, kind of talking about how wonderful it is to see this relaxed side of Meghan. What a great opportunity it is for her to finally show who she is at home. Then on the flip side, you've got people who were very quick to trash the entire series. I think most of whom hadn't even watched past episode 1. People called it boring, pointless, narcissistic. You name it, they said it. And I think that it really does speak to kind of how Meghan and Harry have positioned themselves since leaving the royal family. You've got some people who will not hear a bad word against them because when they heard Meghan and Harry tell their side of things as far as their royal experience was concerned, people were horrified. Then you've got people on the other side of things who look at it as, two people who really betrayed a family and who acted in a kind of disrespectful and unpleasant way. A lot of people looked at them and said, hey, if I ever spoke about my father like that on national, nay, international TV, I would never be forgiven. And I think those are the people who continue to criticize Meghan and Harry. When it comes to the criticism that matters, I think it's really up to the viewer themselves to decide whether or not this is a series they want to watch. Again, it really depends on what you're hoping to get out of it, but I'm telling you now, Martha Stewart is a better choice if you're looking for recipes and lifestyle tips. I think when it comes to this kind of perceived competition, I guess you could say, between Harry and Meghan and William and Kate, they are two very, very different couples, and they always have been. William and Kate were never the duo who were going to be kind of making out in public or anything like that, because they know that that is not something that is appropriate for them to do. That being said, William and Kate have been through one of the most traumatic years of their lives. Kate has been battling cancer. King Charles has also been battling cancer. William has been doing his utmost to support the two of them while also shouldering all of the additional responsibility that they haven't been able to take on. And I think that that whole scenario has made William and Kate so much less concerned about keeping up with appearances. I think that what they took away from that is not only a huge feeling of gratitude that they still have one another, but also a sense that the British public is going to forgive them if they act a little bit more human. They don't need to be perfect all the time. We saw that ridiculous scandal erupt when, the edited photo of Kate was released around Mother's Day. And I think that Kate really realized at that point that she needs to offer more of herself to the public rather than kind of issuing these statements through publicists and advisors and carefully curated imagery, because people will know that that kind of thing is fake. It's interesting when people say that some of that relaxation from William and Kate may have come from seeing Harry and Meghan in a similar light. But actually, I would argue that William and Kate went there first. You know, we have spent so many years seeing Harry and Meghan kind of hide behind the walls of this $14.65 million mansion that they live in. They haven't really showed anything of the home, save for the few clips that we've seen in the background of Zoom appearances. They haven't really offered any insight into the lives of their children, Archie and Lilibet. And all of that changed, you know, on or around January 1st of this year, when Meghan came back to Instagram with a bang. All of a sudden, she's posting on Instagram stories. She's sharing images of her children, albeit with their faces hidden. But she's also revealing glimpses inside their home. You know, when she paid tribute to her late rescue dog, Guy, she shared a whole load of images and videos that were taken in and around the property. Lilibet features in the main image that was released when she changed the name of her brand to As Ever. So I think that rather than Meghan and Harry being the inspiration, it's actually a case that the two sides have cooled, shall we say, in their ongoing rift. Do I think the rift has been mended? No, absolutely not. At this point, I actually think it's water that will never go under the bridge. But I do think that everyone has ceased to be on high alert. You know, it used to be that anytime Meghan and Harry took a step out of their front door in front of the cameras, the entire royal family in the UK was waiting on tenterhooks to see what they were going to say, what accusation or attack was going to be flung at them from across the Atlantic. Now that Harry and Meghan seem to have moved past that phase of their life, everyone has been able to breathe a sigh of relief. And as I said, I think when it comes to William and Kate, everything that they've endured throughout the past year has made them realize that fretting about that kind of stuff just isn't worth it. So we do see a few glimpses inside Meghan's life. She does talk about the fact that both of her children are very outdoorsy. She talks about them kind of being covered in scratches and bruises because they're always playing outside. She also alluded to this in an interview that she did to promote the show. She kind of talked about the fact that, you know, Archie loves to be outside and watch tea steep in the sunshine, which is something that Meghan used to do as a child. She talks about the fact that Archie and Lily would visit her on set, that Harry would kind of bring them and that they were so proud of her. They would watch her make these recipes. She says that Archie is already worried about the fact that she works too hard. So we did get to see a little bit of what Meghan's life is like with her children. But again, the life that she kind of talks about in interviews, which is one where she's waking up to make fried eggs and bacon because that's Archie and Harry's favorite, it kind of then jars with the image that you get in the Netflix show in which she's kind of arranging fruit in a rainbow and turning food into ladybugs. It all seems a little bit contradictory, but she also does offer some glimpses inside her own life. We got to see a picture of her wedding cake at one point. And you also get to see a very interesting dynamic between her and a few of her friends. She seems to have taken great pains to kind of include a wide spread of her friendship group. But I think that does go to show you that she is no longer kind of moving exclusively in the same celebrity circles that she used to. She has some friends who are outside of the celebrity realm, which I think is interesting. And then in addition to that, one of the most interesting points that I took away from the show was when she kind of lectures her friend Mindy Kaling for calling her Meghan Markle. She makes very clear that her name is Meghan Sussex, which isn't something we've really ever heard from her before. Obviously, Meghan and Harry have continued to use the names, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, for all of the years since they have stepped away from the royal family. And it's been a really big bone of contention, especially in the UK, where people have long argued that the two of them should have lost their titles once and for all. But Meghan makes very clear in this show that she has no plans to drop the Sussex name. In fact, she speaks of her pride in it being a shared name that she, Harry, and their children all have. So I think that's a very interesting thing, because what it says to me is that even though Harry and Meghan have endeavored, at least on the surface, to cut ties with the royal family altogether, they know that they truly never can, because at the end of the day, they've made their post-royal identity entirely centered around the royal family. And Meghan's kind of discussion of her name in that way just goes to prove that. A lot of people who were critical of her and Harry continuing to use the Duke and Duchess of Sussex as their official titles, even those people would likely not argue that Archie and Lilibet should be stripped of their titles. They are innocent children. They were born into the royal family. And I think it is the right thing for the two of them to continue being Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. And one day, depending on how things pan out, the two of them may be bestowed a title by King Charles or King William. Who knows what will happen in that regard? But I think that Meghan speaking about the Sussex name as being something that she was able to kind of pass down to and then share with her children is likely going to soften the criticism about her and Harry continuing to use those titles. Do I think it will disappear altogether? No, absolutely not. But I think that it will have made people more aware of the fact that it is a family name. It isn't necessarily something that is private to Meghan and Harry, but it's actually something that Archie and Lily will continue to use throughout much of their lives. And I think that's an important thing, because when you look at the royal family as a whole, it has been kind of broken apart in recent years. A lot of the people who used to be core members of that inner royal circle are gone. We've lost the Queen. Prince Andrew is persona non grata. Prince Philip has also passed away. And then you've got Harry and Meghan on the other side of an ocean. And I think that one of the saddest things about Meghan and Harry's departure from the royal family is that it took Archie and Lilibet away from that side of their family. They don't really know their cousins. Lilibet, as far as we're aware, has not even met George, Charlotte, and Louis. So my hope is that if Meghan understands the significance of the Sussex name, it will perhaps help her and Harry to realize the importance of Archie and Lilibet getting to know the rest of the royals. I think the likelihood is that the next step, at least for Meghan, is to write a book. And I think the reason we haven't yet had a book from her is because she's not sure which way to go with it. I think the likelihood is, given that she's releasing this brand as ever, which is inherently a lifestyle brand that will include everything from kind of foods to table linens, I think the chances are we will see some kind of hostessing Bible from Meghan. I would hope, given that she shot the As Ever brand image in the garden of her Montecito home, I would hope that any book like that would offer a glimpse inside her actual house, unlike the Netflix series. But I do think that that is what is going to be required of her if she wants to keep people interested and engaged. People don't want a false image of what Meghan and Harry's life is. In the age of reality TV and social media, people are far too used to seeing the nitty-gritty of their favorite celebrities' lives. So offering them a false version of your life just isn't going to work. People see through it too quickly. And I think one of Meghan's biggest mistakes here was that she began showing so much more of her personal life on social media at the same time that she was releasing a TV show that offered nothing really about her personal life. And the differences between the two are very stark. You can tell from the get-go that it's not her kitchen that she's filming in. And you can tell from the get-go that, the fruit platter that she's creating is not something that she cooks for her children, because she's posting that on Instagram. So I do think that Meghan less so Harry, but I think Meghan has been much more relaxed than we've really ever seen her before. She's sharing at least a few glimpses inside her life, and I think she will continue to do so. I think her desire is to almost pick up where she left off with the TIG, which, you know, she shut down almost 10 years ago now. But I think her plan was always to build the TIG into a lifestyle brand that encompassed everything, you know, books, a website, products, tips, tricks, everything. And I think that that's where she's going with As Ever. You've got the Netflix show already, you've got the fruit jams already, and I think that the likelihood is that the As Ever website will be an evolution of what the TIG was. And the TIG was all about Meghan. It was all about her life, her travel, her favorite foods, her favorite wines, all of that stuff. If she's able to get back to even a small part of what the TIG was, I think she'll probably find herself with a lot more fans than she's had in recent years.